Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Clean Energy District's online Lunch and Learn. More for our missions, solar financing options for local governments. I'm Jolene Jansen, and I serve as the manager for the Clayton County Energy District and also as the coaching coordinator for new energy district startups here in Eastern Iowa. Just as a little brief explanation about energy districts that's rapidly spreading here in Iowa, we have now have 6 incorporated nonprofit clean energy districts throughout Iowa. The ones that are incorporated are the Winneshiek Energy District. There's an energy district now formed in Howard County, here in Clayton County, Dubuque County, Johnson County, and Delaware County. And we have seeds planted in Allamakee County, as well as Jackson County, and there's an energy district beginning in Polk County as well. Energy districts exist to build community by facilitating fair access to clean and local energy. We intend for our work to reach all aspects of life here in Iowa, whether it's in our homes, on our farms, in our businesses on Main Street, and for non-taxable entities like churches and hospitals, and for small governments or local governments like we're focusing on here today. So just a little bit of review of what we have planned for today.
Jolene, I think you might have muted yourself. If you want to get that back on, I think that we'd all like to hear what you're saying.
Can you hear me again? All right.
Yep.
All right. So just a little bit of an outline for today's Lunch and Learn. Again, I'm Jolene Jansen, and following my brief remarks here, we'll hear from Joel Zook, who you just heard from a minute ago, and he's the energy planner for the Winneshiek Energy District. He's going to talk a little bit about the Soul Smart process that's going on for some of the cities here in Northeast Iowa. Then we're going to hear from Amy Bouska, who's with the Howard County Energy District and is a Cresco City Council person. She's going to talk to us about solar power purchase agreements for small cities. And finally, Bonnie Baseman is here. She's the city clerk for the city of Marquette, and she's going to talk about their new solar-powered well pilot project. And finally, in the end, we'll have take a little bit of question and answers, and that'll be it for the Lunch and Learn. As far as some housekeeping, today's slides, after today's presentation, we will share out the slideshows as well as this entire session is being recorded. If you have any questions throughout the Lunch and Learn, please just submit them via the chat button that you should see on your screen somewhere. Attendees can just go ahead and remain, keep their audio muted during the meeting. And I also wanted to just put a quick plug in for some of the upcoming events happening here in June throughout our clean energy districts. It will be a very exciting and busy month for energy districts. On Thursday, June 6th at 6:30 here in Elkader at Deb's Brewtopia, the Clayton County Energy District is going to host a Rhythm and Brews concert for Green Iowa AmeriCorps. On Saturday, June 8th from 9 to 1 at the Winneshiek County Fairgrounds, the Winneshiek Energy District will host their 2nd annual Electric Vehicle Festival. On Friday, June 14th at 8 a.m. in the Monona Community Room up in Monona, the Clayton County Energy District will host their quarterly energy breakfast, and the topic for that energy breakfast will be what is Soul Smart, and we will also host an LED bulb swap. On Friday, June 21st, from 11 till 2:30 in St. Olaf, the Clayton County Energy District will host the Clayton County Go Solar Learning Day and Solar Crawl. That'll be a great opportunity to learn about opportunities for solar ownership. We'll have on the 45-minute, every 45 minutes, solar 101 discussions. We'll also have a solar vendor fair for solar contractors. You'll get a chance to meet them, and then you'll get a map and you can go out on a self-guided tour and look at the many instances of solar throughout Clayton County. And on Saturday, June 22nd, from 9 to 11 in Delhi, the Delaware County Energy District will host their very first event. It will be an energy breakfast, and the topic will be solar and battery storage, and that will be at Wolfco Electric in Delhi. So those are the upcoming events within the clean energy districts of Iowa. We're looking forward to seeing you at those events and hope that you can come and support the energy districts and learn a little bit about local and clean energy opportunities in Iowa. So now I'm going to hand it over, or Joel's going to take over and tell us just a little bit about SolSmart, and then we'll get on with Amy and Bonnie. Can you hear me, Joel?
Sorry, how about now? I'll give that again.
All right, great.
For those of you that are on the call, I know that some of you are SolSmart participants, and so may have some idea about what this is about. But for the rest of you, SolSmart is a national program. It's a certification that cities and counties can receive for making sure that they're a solar-friendly community in regards to mostly zoning and permitting options for the local government. Those are the big highlighted piece. A big key piece in getting the SolSmart designation is taking a review of your zoning ordinances and making sure that solar is allowed specifically in the majority of your zoning areas without having to go through a special Board of Adjustment process or anything like that. So we have 9 communities in Northeast Iowa that are getting the SolSmart designation and working with the Winnebago Energy District on that process. But if you're interested, you can also sign up through yourself as a SolSmart community, and we'd love to talk to you more if you're curious about that, and we can get you pointed in the right direction. I'm going to keep it quick so that we can get on to our presentations.
All right, so now we're going to hear from Amy. We just have a little bit of shuffling. I should have maybe explained this at the beginning. 2 of us are here in Elkader, and Joel and Amy are up in Decorah. So Amy's going to take over here with her presentation. Hang on one second. All right, now we get to see both of us.
All right, there we are.
Great, hope this works. We have a high-tech way of transferring things. We slide the box around. So I'm Amy Bouska. I'm a member of the Cresco City Council and also chair of the Howard County Energy District, which did not exist when Cresco began the solar journey. We were the 3rd city or non-governmental entity to use a power purchase agreement in Iowa after small towns like Dubuque and I think Lynn County. So it was a little tougher for us than I think it would be for any of you beginning it now. Joel, do you have the? Oh, okay.
Whoops.
Okay. So before doing a solar project, and I'll say this about a dozen times, please do efficiency first. Now, an exception might be that this year, the tax credits will start to decrease next January. They don't go away, they just start to decrease. So what you might want to do is think about what you can do with efficiency, but you might not get it finished, but take that into account because I'll explain later, we're right now paying for power that we're not actually using, which is a little frustrating. However, studies are clear. If you can't do both solar and efficiency, do efficiency first. It's cheaper. There are no tax issues. It's really where you want to go. And I just threw this in the last bullet. Has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I try to mention it everywhere. If you're not looking at time of day rates, particularly for any owned street lights that you might have, it doesn't work on rented ones, but on owned, you can save a ton of money. So when I talk about efficiency, this is a graph of our city hall. Before we began the journey, we were using now 42 or 43,000 kilowatt hours a year. Now we're at about 26,000. And that's just efficiency. It has nothing to do with solar. And the biggest thing we did was replace 2 of our old air conditioning units, 2 out of 3. And you can see what that did. Then we went in and did LED replacements. And if we had never done solar, we would have saved 40% of our electricity at City Hall. So before doing a solar project, another thing to think about is be sure to look at what each of your electric meters is doing. We literally went through our bills meter by meter to see where we were using electricity, and did it even make sense to have a meter? Are you getting a demand charge? All of those things will affect your decision about using solar. You want to talk with your utility and understand what their position is on solar, what you have to do, because you're their customer. They're not going to talk to your investor. They're going to talk to you. You want to understand the regulatory situation, especially net metering. And there was a huge fight in the last legislature down in Des Moines. And there is some feeling that net metering is in danger. Another reason, frankly, to do solar now, if you can, and if you're interested. And another thing to consider is you need to have somebody either on your council or your city clerk, a volunteer, whoever, who's able to shepherd the project, because there will be times if you use a power purchase agreement that there will be a lot of reading and a lot of work going on. So what is a solar power purchase agreement and why bother? Cities and other non-taxpayers have no way to take advantage of the tax credits that are such a use to tax-paying entities. They, in effect, will pay about 45% of the cost of the installation. We couldn't use them. But we still felt that we had a fiduciary responsibility to our taxpayers to explore the possibility of solar. And it just happened that many kudos to Eagle Point Solar in Dubuque. They drove a case up to the state Supreme Court that resulted in the legalization of third-party ownership in Iowa. This, I'm not even going to leave it on long enough for you to read it. If you want to go back, this is the US EPA definition of a solar power purchase agreement, but here's what it really is. And if there's one slide that we probably should spend the whole time on, it's this one. So on the left is you, the non-taxpayer. On the right is your investor, who is a taxpayer and who has an appetite for tax credits or tax credits. In the middle between you is the special purpose vehicle, which you don't set up, the investor sets up. It's a legal entity that kind of does all the legal stuff in between you. Your relationship to the special purpose vehicle is you lease it, your land or your roof or wherever you want to put the solar. They pay you, I put $1, that's what's in our agreement, but they pay whatever you agree that they are going to pay you for the use of those. They sell you all of the power that's generated, and I put all in capital. You pay the agreed price for all of the power. This is not like the Alliant or Mid-American or whatever. You don't get to pay for the power you use. You pay for all the power they generate. And that's why it's important to do efficiency first. We kind of messed up at one of our locations. The people swore that they were never going to replace some of their lights. And so we sized the solar to meet that demand, and then a couple of years later they replaced all the lights with LEDs. And now all of a sudden, the panels are generating more than we're using. So I got a little upset about that, but it happened. Your relationship is with the utility, and your net metering is between you and the utility. The installer and the warranties from the equipment manufacturers deal with the special purpose vehicle. And I put in bank, your investor may or may not need to borrow money. Maybe they have it sitting around. I should be so lucky. And maybe they have to borrow it. So how did we do this? First, we kind of looked at a basic spreadsheet and said, does this even make sense? Remember, back then, no city our size had done it, and we just didn't know the answer to that question. We asked the council, can we go ahead and look at this in more detail? And they said yes. They didn't understand what we were doing, but they said yes anyway. The basic non-solar specific legal questions. When do we have to have hearings? Do we have to get bids? All of those things that you as a public entity have to deal with, we got those settled. Strangely enough, we didn't have to have any hearings to enter into a 25-year contract to buy thousands of dollars of electricity a year, but we did have to have multiple public hearings for renting our land and roofs out for $1 a year. I haven't figured that out, but it's true. Talk to your insurer. Now, technically, you aren't the owner of these things, but they're on your roof or on your land, and so you need to have your insurer on board. I think there's some kind of third-party named agreement, but I'd have to get that from our city clerk if you are interested in that. Here's what I would change. We just went out to 3 installers. Now, at this point, we don't have an investor involved. We just went to 3 installers and said, geez, here are our electricity bills. What would you do? And they all came back with plans, and they were different. Some of them we liked, some of them, like for the canopies over some of our parking lots, we weren't particularly fond of. There is a lot more expertise now, and I would do that differently. I would decide ahead of time what I wanted. Then we went to look for local investors. Now, we did not put an ad in the paper. We were not legally required to do so. We just asked around. Financial advisors and banks, do you have any clients, you know, that you think might be interested in this? And the place I would suggest, if you go forward with this, is if you have anyone that you know that's invested in ethanol, they're looking for tax credits. And that's a great place to start. Our investor just kind of approached us after we've been kind of looking around, and boy, it worked out really well. We have an excellent relationship with our investor. It's never been acrimonious at all. We've been very happy. We did hire specialized legal assistants recommended by Larry Grimstad in Decorah. We hired a lawyer from the cities. I'm not sure, maybe you can get by without that now, I don't know. But frankly, our city attorney flatly refused to be involved because he didn't think he had the expertise to do it. He helped us with the land lease and things like that, but he just said, I don't know anything about this, I'm not doing it. You may have a more adventuresome city attorney or county attorney. One thing I don't know if the Alliant or Mid-American are still doing, but Alliant actually told us what they expected their future rate increases to be, and that was a big help. So I would suggest asking them. Decide where you want it. A big issue is internet availability, because you're going to want a monitoring system on there. And another big thing is the roof age and condition. We looked at one site, our theater, 100-year-old roof. We had trouble with leaking anyway. We just said, we can't deal with putting stuff up there, not to mention that it was about 3 stories tall. What are you going to have to do to prepare the site? Is it on the historical registry, etc.? We had the first public hearing. Other cities who had solar, not through a PPA, had warned us, oh, the whole town is going to descend on you and tell you how awful it is and it's going to be ugly. Well, no one did. We had one negative comment, and it was from a member of the park board who didn't like that we were putting solar in a couple of the parks. So then we selected the investor. Now the issue here, when you want to select the investor, technically the investor selects the installer. But the only number that really matters to you is how much are they going to charge you for the electricity, not how much it's going to cost to install. That goes into the investor's calculation on what they're going to charge you. Now, I'm not sure we completely understood that, so we actually were looking at the bids, but that's the way it really works. Is the number that matters to you is the cost of the electricity and the future rate increases and some other things that I'll explain. So then we went in, and I have spreadsheets that are huge, multiple versions of them, especially the issue of, do we want to buy it out? Do we not want to buy it out? What is that going to look like? Are we going to have to issue debt to do that? When we do that in 7 years, you're really going to want to understand that. Now, one thing is that I've been amused by, our public works director at the beginning and his staff said, oh no, we never want to own this. It's too complicated. What if it breaks down? We don't know how to fix it. And by the end of this, by the time it was up, they were going, well, of course we want to buy that out. It doesn't break. This is fine. We can do this. It really was a journey, and it's been fantastic. Then we did something that I think is a really good idea. The council is not going to understand your spreadsheets. We took a risks and opportunities paper, when I say we, the city clerk and I, to the council that in very plain English spelled out what we thought the gains and possible risks were from doing this. We tried to make it, you know, not fancy words, and we insisted that they read it and discuss it so that, well, so that we were all making an informed decision. One thing, if you have a cooperative investor, we were actually exchanging spreadsheets with our investor, and we actually found that he had missed something and therefore thought he had to charge us more than he really did to get the same return. You may not have an investor that's quite that cooperative. Then we sat down with our lawyer in the middle, the investor, the installer, and us, and we went through the contract, which ours, not counting appendices, is 28 pages. And it has a lot of stuff that I'm not sure had to be in there, but the lawyer put it in there, and you know how the lawyers are. Some things that are particularly important that you want to look at are, you will probably gain financially by buying it out after the tax credits have been used up. That's roughly in year 7 or year 8. And you need to understand the parameters for that buyout. Legally, you cannot at the inception set a price for the buyout. I do not understand that. It has something to do with it not being a lease, or I don't know. But you can't set a price, even though everybody has an expectation of what that price will be, which is round numbers, something like 1/3 of the original price. Now that may change over time. It may change before we get to the buyout, but that's kind of the expectation now. The other important parameter that I noted before is the initial rate for the power and the annual price inflation. The duration of the contract, we signed a 25-year contract. I mean, that's as long as our franchise agreement with Alliant. You can write these for shorter. You can write them for 10 years. You can write them for 8 years. One issue we had a lot of discussion on were the failure parameters and force majeure and what counted as our fault and what counted as their fault if something got broken. One thing we did not have a lot of discussion about was renewable energy credits. Do you want to keep them? Frankly, they're so cheap now that it really doesn't matter. We kept ours, and it just hasn't been worth our while to do anything with them. They're pretty cheap. I'm kind of thinking I might sell them to the Winneshiek Energy District. But then there's a final council vote. What they're voting on is entering into the contract. You notify the utility and complete the interconnection applications, which are unbelievably long pieces of paper for a commercial account. But your installer should be there to help you. Nonetheless, you will sign the interconnection agreements as the utility's customer. Oh, I forgot one thing and I actually went back and read our contract this morning that we didn't have in there as decommissioning. I thought we did. Suppose at some point, I'm making this up, the sun stops shining or whatever, and you want those solar panels out of your parks, you should have some kind of agreement about who's going to remove them. Now, realistically, these have lifespans of 25 and more years, so it's not going to happen tomorrow. But I think that might be one thing we missed. So our project, of course, everyone has to show a picture or so. We have 7 total installations, 4 on roofs, 3 on the ground. 2 of them are huge, serving our wells, and 1 that serves street lights. We produce about 435 kilowatt hours a year. In 2016 dollars, we're saving about $10,000 a year. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but the way I look at it is that's a free police car for us every 3 years. And the police always seem to need new cars. Now, it depends on your financing costs if you have to finance the buyout, but our best guess is that if we do a buyout, we will save about $500,000 in net present value in 2016, which is about $1 million in nominal savings over the life of the system. That's, by the way, all of this is before Alliant announced their current rate increase. Our assumption was that they were going to increase rates about 4.5% every year, which is a little less than their announced 25%. I just stuck this in. It's something I didn't know earlier. Be sure to include fencing in your project. We have had some vandalism. The latest was somebody with a slingshot, slinging whatever you throw, lead fishing weights. And boy, those can crack a panel in no time. And we haven't been able to catch the person. So, but you should be sure to include fencing, if nothing else for safety. You don't want people in there playing around with your wiring. So I put this in just so you could see what rate increases do. So in 2010, we were paying about $4,800 a year at City Hall for electricity. Last year, we paid $3,100. Those are real dollars. That's like money out the door. My estimate is that in 2018, if we had made no changes at all, we would have been paying $6,400. So we're paying $3,100 instead of $6,400. About $1,500 of that was avoided rate increases. 1,000, and how you split this up depends on how you do the calculations. But roughly, of the other $1,500, it's about half efficiency improvements and half because the solar electricity we're buying at 10 cents instead of the 14 cents from Alliant. But the big message is don't forget about what rate increases will do to you. So there are the pictures. That's our lodge in one of our parks and the installation at our old water tower. And by the way, not a single person, not one, has come to us and said, oh, geez, that's really ugly. We specifically asked the people across the street, are you okay with this? Do you want to help us landscape it? We have not had a single complaint. We try to make sure that everybody knows that it's saving them tax dollars. So some of the things that surprised us, the site prep and the legal work were more expensive than planned, but on the other hand, we had to take down a building, an old building. So I'm not sure that would be true for everyone. We had no complaints from residents in spite of being warned that way. One thing I would say to you now is the ground staff hate mowing under the panels. We're testing pollinator-friendly, specialized, short native planting, but be careful that you don't cross your own weed ordinances, because of course even short is going to get to be 12 to 18 inches tall, and if you have a 6-inch mowing ordinance, you want to be careful of that, because you don't want to be the person who sets a bad example. But I think we're going to go ahead and try to modify our weed ordinance or our mowing ordinance so that we can put more under more of the ground mounts. Surprisingly, Alliant was very easy to work with. The local people here in town and their renewable energy people were just the most helpful people you can imagine. And that was even while Alliant's corporate position was very difficult, with hardening, I will say, against customer-owned generation. Surprisingly, even though we used top quality panels, the manufacturer went insolvent, and we had to deal with the issue of getting a backup warranty, which we decided against, by the way, but you might want to make sure you look at that issue. The legal parts of the process, excluding the actual contract, were very straightforward. There were no problems. The buyout formula was the most difficult part of the contract. And I will tell you that this surprised me. I read it and went, oh, well, that looks just fine. And then I modeled it and went, oh my, this is not good. And we actually went back and rewrote it. So it's really important to look at and I can't use formula because remember, you can't determine this ahead of time, but the description of what you're going to think about at the buyout. One thing I will say is if you keep close track of your electricity usage, it's harder to do when you have solar because of course Alliant bills on weird dates and the solar people bill us month to month. And so it's been a little difficult to do that. If anyone wants my spreadsheet and some little time on how to go over that and how to do it. The problem is, of course, that not only do your billing dates not match, but you've got to deal with your net metering account too. By the way, you want to make sure as part of the installation that the investor has an online revenue grade monitoring system that you can access. And when I say revenue grade, meaning that it would be okay to use to bill people with. And I don't think that any professional installer would not have that, but you just want to check. One thing that was not really a surprise was our first risk was that Alliant would change or even repeal its net metering policy, and sure enough, they did that. And I literally did not sleep. I thought, what have I done to the city? What have I, because remember, you're contractually obligated to buy this power, whether you need it or not. And Alliant was not clear what they were going to do about third-party ownership, and were they going to net meter with third-party, and literally this would have been a disaster for us. Finally, they came down and said that they would net meter it. I got to sleep for the first time in a week or so, but clarify, if you are not using Alliant or Mid-American, clarify this with them first. So just a little advice, don't skimp on the prep work. Now, as I say, we hired a specialist lawyer. We were very happy. We know that we thought about things that we might not otherwise. That's kind of up to you. Be sure to talk with your insurer. Do efficiency first, can't say that enough. We tried to communicate with all of our stakeholders. One thing after you've got all this in and you think, okay, everything's fine, somehow our net metering accounts got lost at one point. They all dropped to zero. So be sure to look at your bills. They said it was the new billing system, and it probably was, but it's just something to keep track of. And honestly, after I just spent 19 slides telling you how hard this was, don't give up because it looks too complicated. We are very happy with how this turned out. I put some references here and my email address. And what I didn't put up there is if you would like a white copy of this to save ink on printing it out, just email me and I'll send you a white copy that won't use up all your ink. And now I think we're back to Jolene.
All right. Okay. Let's see here.
Well, Jolene gets things set up. I'll just remind you that if you guys have any questions, we'll try to answer them at the end, but if you can type them into the chat box, we'll answer those as we wrap things up.
How are we doing? Are you guys seeing what? Are you seeing this?
Yeah, I think we got you.
Okay. Oh, but our video is not going. Oh, we're not going to do video. Okay. Okay, so here's Bonnie Basement, and she's just going to tell us a little bit about the city of Marquette and their pilot solar project.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Basement. I'm with the city of Marquette, as Jolene said. We have installed solar panels to offset the electric costs for our well number 4. How it all started, back in May of 2018, Jolene put on a solar for non-taxable entity workshop. The mayor encouraged me to attend. I did hear the presentation from Amy Bouska while I was there, and kind of thought, hey, maybe this will work for some place in Marquette. So I went back and I talked to the public works director and said, hey, do you have any ideas? And based on location of our well number 4 and it being in a sunny spot, he thought that that might be a spot to try solar. Marquette is right on the Mississippi River, right in the middle of all the bluffs. So location was a big deal. If you get against the bluff, there's no sun there. So what I did after that was I went to city council. There's a lot of questions because it wasn't something that was in the budget. And where are we going to get the money to fund this? Do we want to do a power purchase agreement? Do we want to just pay for it outright? Who are, you know, we went and we got 3 bids. We looked at several different options. Council decided that there were some projects that were done in the previous fiscal year that opened up some funds. And so they kind of were looking at and leaned towards just buying this out as a pilot project and paying for it without doing the power purchase agreement. So in the end, we ended up with a 36.2 kilowatt system. It's 83%. How that works is Alliant gives us credit for 83% of the energy that we produce, and then we still have to pay for the other 17%. The total cost of the project was $76,000, but the payback year is 10.2 years. So the selling points for the city council was that it's offset the electric for the water rates. So because we're saving electricity on running our well, it keeps the water rates lower. In the 25-year warranty of the solar array, we get a net cash gain of $173,000. with an 11% rate of return on our investment. And as Amy said, that was using like a 3% Alliant increase every year, which it's been then projecting that to be more. So this net cash gain over the life of the array could be more than that. We'll save 954 tons of carbon dioxide from the carbon footprint every year, which is the equivalent of reducing driving by 1.9 million miles, or saving 97,000 gallons of gasoline. And it's the equivalent of about 1 million pounds of burned coal. So, and it's working. I can tell you that just in the month of April, our electric bill, which is normally around $700 for that well, our electric bill was $57 last month. So I'm tracking the savings so that I can show my council that this did work. And they're pretty excited about it. Here is the inside of the well house. There is me flipping the switch. The array was up and running in February in the cold, so it took a couple months, but it is working. So there's the outside. It's got a great southeast aspect. One thing during our last budget session, every time we decided to talk about the electricity for our facilities, the city council would ask me if solar would work for this. So they're excited about the way this has worked so far, and they are looking at the potential of solar panels in some of our other locations. Our sewer plant takes a lot of money. The wetland center, we're looking at our shop and our police station and city hall. So we have, the mayor has kind of indicated that if we were going to do some of these other projects, we're waiting to see from costs, and we'd probably look further into the power purchase agreement for additional solar for our city. The main thing is my city council wants to keep water and sewer rates down. So if we can eliminate some of the utility costs, it will also just be passed on to the taxpayers as lower water and sewer rates. And that was really key in their decision making.
All right, so now that's pretty much what we had to present today. I wonder if, I don't see where we received any questions. Oh wait, maybe there's one. Yes, there's a question. It's from Richard Betts, and it's to anybody that just spoke. Has anyone tried to use downtown buildings owned by business owners to install panels on their buildings? And if so, how did the cities approach them to use their building roofs?
Yeah, I'll try to take a stab at that. I have not heard of anyone doing that yet. I think that the difficulty behind that is that a lot of times the state electrical inspectors are going to want to have systems be connected to the building that they're serving, so that there's not two separate electrical systems going on. And the utilities generally aren't allowing you to install, or to basically, sometimes people call it virtual net metering, and the utilities aren't too keen on it. The idea that you could sell energy at one location and sell it into the grid at one location and receive a credit for it on a different account. So the utilities interpretation of things saying, you know, that you need to have the any type of distributed energy, but solar is what we're talking about. That the solar panels would need to be, you know, at your location, you know, either on their land or on the roof of the building, and serving the meter the electric account that you're dealing with. So it's possible. They've got a couple pilots thrown out in this upcoming rate case that they might look at some flexibility with that, especially for city government and large users with multiple accounts. But that's very much in the works. We won't know anything about that for probably at least a year to get those details worked out.
Well, I didn't enter my question, but I wonder if maybe you could address the idea of solar installs for municipal utilities. I know we have some people in attendance here that that are from city entities that have municipal utilities, and how solar ownership or city local government municipal ownership of solar and how that might work for them.
Yeah, well, I think that the same possibilities that we talked about, where if you could put solar on your city government buildings, that would be an option. But you could also have your municipal utility own the panels outright. So it opens up some possibilities. I think on one hand, you could think about putting panels at City Hall or a well or a sewer treatment plant. And it's nice that you've got a utility there that you can work with. In that case, typically the city utilities and the city governments are connected, but they are actual separate legal entities. So I think it's very possible that the city government would own or lease panels for one of its buildings and receive net metering credits. And that way it would be no different than what Amy and Bonnie were talking about. The other thing to be thinking about is that if the municipal electric utility wanted to own some of its own generation outright, they could put those panels up, and whether or not that was crediting someone's bills or if it was just offsetting their wholesale purchases of power.
I think another issue is that the municipal utilities are not bound by the same rules as the two investor-owned utilities in Iowa. And I've heard rumors, but I have not checked this out, that there are some that don't even allow customer-owned interconnection. And they're not obligated to, as far as I know. So I think that everything is different when you're talking about a municipal utility.
Yeah, that's true. They do have a wide range of rules and policies that they have implemented in-house. And so I think the best thing to do would be having a conversation with your municipal electric utility to see what their policies are on solar and start that conversation with them. I think that in general, they're going to be more open to working with other units of the city government that they're a part of than maybe even other customers. But I think there's 136 municipal utilities across Iowa, and they probably all have their own exact policies.
I'd just like to add something about Bonnie's slide about the wastewater treatment plant, and I didn't mention this. We'd love to put solar at our sewer plant, but we can't because it's big enough to incur a demand charge from Alliance, and we have 2 installations that have demand charges. And that's a charge which if you're fortunate enough not to have any buildings on demand charges, that is not related to the kilowatt hours that you consume, but how much you consume at any one given point in time. So it's like the capacity the utility has to have to serve its customers. And for our buildings, the demand charge is 1/3 roughly of our total bill. And it actually, because solar does not necessarily reduce your demand charge, it means that solar is not financially viable for us at any building that has a demand charge. So that's a critical first step to look at is the place that you'd like to put solar have a demand charge? And maybe it would work for you, but it just completely ruled it out for us.
The city of Marquette, right now, our wastewater treatment plant does not have a demand charge. We're just below that threshold. Our public works director is working with the people that operate, that have the system in there, and they were going to come out and kind of do an energy audit to make sure that when we do turn the system on and start it up, that we do it in the most efficient manner and don't incur that demand charge.
Yeah, I was hoping maybe Joel would address this. I think there are client ratepayers that have been in the demand charge classification or at that level, that there is a method to actually getting out from under the demand classification. Is that not right, Joel?
Only by reducing your total.
Yeah, the Alliant defines their customers, what rate service they're getting by the amount of energy that they're doing. So if it's possible that if you're close, you can do some energy efficiency upgrades that could get you moved down from the large general service rate to the general service rate, and then you would go away with the demand charge. And it is possible that solar under that is going to look a whole lot better than your current large general service. So that's certainly something for folks to be looking at. I think a lot of times people's first thoughts is, well, let's go to our biggest energy account, the one with the biggest bill, the one with the most energy use. That's obviously where we should give our solar first. But it may make sense to be looking at locations that are smaller and thinking about how we could do 4 or 5 smaller arrays at locations that are paying a higher price for their energy, and that's going to be a better investment and a better opportunity, a better payback than maybe the big places, largely because of that demand charge.
Okay. So I don't see where we have any more questions coming in. And we're just short of our 1 o'clock closing. So I feel like unless anybody else has something to share for the good of the order, that will conclude our Lunch and Learn. And I'm really glad we had some great participation here today. We had, at one point, we had up to 30 people that were participating. So hopefully we'll be able to do this again in the coming months. So thank you again for everyone that did attend, and hope you could take away some information for your local governments. So thank you.